Zoom recording,
Okay.
and then we're admitting everybody. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the Parsha. Yeah, we have Chatula, little kitty. So good. So good.
This meeting is being recorded. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, shalom. Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. Look how many people are here. Oh, that's wonderful. Well, so this is an interesting it's a Parsha Ki Teitzei. Is that how I pronounce it?
Teitzei, yep. Yep.
Yeah. And this is Deuteronomy 21 uh verses 10 through 25:19. So it's the deepest legal portion in the Torah. It contains 74 of the 613 commandments, more than any other parsha are discussed. Um, so yeah, thank you for correcting me there, Brother Chapman. Yeah, it's a very interesting. Let's start. We'll do a little brief overview, and then why don't we go ahead and dedicate our Torah study, put our Torah study dedication into the chat, and then I'll turn it over to Rabbi McLashley um, to do the bracha, and then I'll give the overview. Okay, so if you have anyone you want to dedicate your Torah study to, go ahead, put it in the chat. Okay. Oh, for prosperity. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah. For Parnasa. That's what we call that. All right. Yeah. All right.
And I'm going to dedicate it to your friend
Oh,
Saint Germain, so just to keep him in our hearts and minds and memories.
yeah, John Saint Germain. That was
Saint Germain, right?
Yeah, and I see we have a few new people here. That's wonderful. If you're new, that's great. Um, so this is how we do it. We dedicate our Torah study, and then we have the rabbi take it away with a little bit of with the bracha, the blessing, and then we do an overview, and then we get right into the discussions about what's happening. This is super interesting. So why don't you take it away with the bracha?
Baruch sure. Baruch Adonai Olam Asher B'Chad B'Mekol Hamim V'Natan Lo Torah Baruch Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. So this parsha, like I said before, it's the densest legal portion in the Torah. It contains 74 of the tradition's 613 commandments. And so it's more than any other section. Um, in this section, Moses continues his farewell address to the Israelites. See you later. And he does this by moving through an extraordinary range of case law. And of course, the first one that comes up is the treatment of a captive woman who is taken in war. And then it moves on to, and we're going to talk about that, I'm sure. Inheritance rights for the firstborn son of an unloved wife, the rebellious son, the obligation to bury the executed on the same day, returning lost property, and a prohibition about wearing each other's clothes, uh, cross dressing, I guess, sending away a mother bird before taking her young, building it's important to build a safety railing on a roof. That's important. Forbidden mixtures, the kilayim in seeds and in fabric, and cloths. You can't mix certain cloths together. Tzitzit, the commandment of the tzitzit. Um, those are the strings that we wear on the four corners of they're like fringes. It goes into the laws of divorce, the laws around kidnapping, the laws around the fair treatment of workers and the poor, and making sure that they have lunch, which is really nice. The prohibition against charging interest to fellow Israelites, always using honest weights and measures. That's important. And the Parsha's closing command is interesting. It gives me a little bit of a pause. It's to remember and to blot out the memory of Amalek's attack on the vulnerable stragglers as Israel left Egypt. Now, I find it very personally kind of strange that we're commanded to forget something which is now written down and as a reminder to forget it. It's a little backwards because every time we read it we remember it, which is not blotting it out. So I don't really get that one, Rabbi.
Hey, I'll tell you, what's funny about it is that the mitzvah of shikacha, of the sheaf left in the field, if you forget it and you leave it in the field, you can't go back and retrieve it later on. It's for the anim, it's for the poor, right? So
Oh yeah.
it's the only mitzvah. The mitzvah of shikacha is the only mitzvah you can observe by forgetting it.
Oh, that's a good one. That's fascinating. Well, I often wonder with this little business with Amalek if we've already forgotten how much of it we've forgotten. So maybe we forgot the important part that it wants us to forget. I don't know. We will never know. So,
There's a lot of commentary on it, but the idea is that like I said, the way I teach it is a little bit different than the way some of my colleagues teach it. But we're supposed to remember the event, but forget the pain. Well, in other words, it ties into losikom lositor, not lositor, not to bear a grudge. Like, you do what you have to do, but you do it distance from the grudge, as we alluded to last time with the Mitzrim, with the Egyptians, right?
mhm.
Uh, and Aziza White caught me on that one because she was correct. I remember it was Aziza White, I believe it was, that caught, or maybe it was Ava Shaw. It was Ava Shaw or Aziza White caught me on it. But the when by Kriyat Yamsuf, the parting of the sea, people they started rejoicing. Hey, hey, look at this. The Mitzrayim are really getting it dished out to them. But what happened was the Malachim, the angels, began singing. Zmiel, they started singing, and Hashem rebuked the angel.
Mhm.
He rebuked the angel, saying, "Wait, wait, wait, wait. These are my creatures. They're drowning. You have no business singing." So the whole idea is that I think the same thing with Amalek is that um, you know we blot out the memory. Look, by Purim, what do we do with Haman? We say
Right.
Haman's name. We say
Yeah.
Haman's name, and then we shake the groggers to blot out his name.
Right. To blot it
So
out.
let me ask you a question. Why not just delete his name? Then we don't need the groggers.
Exactly. Exactly. I don't know. I was a question of mine. I
Well,
always
I
had
think
that question.
I think the thing of this is that you remember it in order to negate it. You have to recognize it in order
Mm,
to negate it. In other words, it's like in the medical profession, you as a doctor who saved many lives, the problem has to be identified and acknowledged before it can be addressed.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that makes perfect sense. That does make sense. So let's talk about this woman who is shapely in form.
Yafa Torah, yeah.
Yeah. So you know what I read about Yafatora is that term is used only 3 times
In the
in,
entire Torah, yeah.
yeah, in the Torah. And usually it's shapely in form and appearance. It's talking in this case, and it's been used 2 other times, um, and and shapely in form and appearance. And one of those times, it's used to describe Joseph, I believe.
Mhm.
Now, in this particular uh, time when it's being used, it cuts off the appearance part. It just says shapely of form. And so my assumption there is that it's talking about a, a woman who is captive in a war. You go to battle, you capture people, and there's and to the victors go the spoils, and that includes women and so on and so forth. At that time, that was very common. And so you have a woman who is shapely in form, but they leave out the words and in appearance. And I
Mhm.
think that they do that because I think the whole idea of taking a woman who is shapely in form to be your bride or to be, your wife, is it's emphasizing some disdain or distaste in the Torah for that type of behavior, because
Yeah.
set up from that behavior is a bunch of other things that you have to do to sort of cool your jets. I would say before you take this woman and make her your bride, you have to allow her, what, 30 days to mourn.
Morning of Avelut, and she has to her fingernails have to grow long, and in other words, you have to allow it time. And even after allowing this cooling off period to cool your jets, as you mentioned, juxtaposed with then and we come across the Ben Sora Omora, the rebellious son. So it's
Mm,
implied that if you take this person, I always had a question back when I was in your show. I said, what is this really? I mean, the thing that says is that as just common decency, morality. So I always have to explain to people, especially who are coming from a different background or ascribe to a different faith system. It seems just so absolutely, uh,
terrible. Seems
barbaric.
terrible.
Right, barbaric. I mean, why would
Barbaric.
a person why would a person even think that they can take a captive and treat the person as though they were chattel, as though they were property? They're not property. They're a human being, for God's sake. And how could you possibly, why? In other words, are the laws concerning the Eshet Yafet Toah? Why are they necessary? And I always explain that there are many things in the Torah you have to understand. You're looking at a different time, a different place, a different time, a different culture. It's like the law of Abram and Achai, not to take a limb from a living creature, right? You can't take a limb from a living creature. It's one of the Sheva Mitzvot Noah, one of the
Yeah.
7 commandments given to Noah. It's one of the 7 commandments given to Noah. You can't take a limb from a living creature. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, I'm a vegetarian. Why? I wouldn't even think of taking a limb from anything.
Right. Right.
Why would you? Because at
Times were
that
different.
time, times were different, and it was considered no different than plucking an apple from a tree. I mean, it was just, so yeah, that every living being has rights. But I mean, the idea is that I sort of like you're aghast. Wait a minute. You actually have to address the rights of a female captive. I mean, we're talking about people here. If they believe in Hashem, they believe in God, they believe in the Torah. You take a captive woman. I mean, you really have to spell it out that, hey, look, this is a human being. She has to be accorded rights. She has to be accorded respect, RESPECT, in capital letters. And,
Yeah.
you know, this isn't property. This isn't chattel. This is
Well, I found something. I found something in this parsha which I found very interesting, which talks about this very concept that you're mentioning about not treating people as property.
right.
So there's two times occurrences in the entire Torah of this word, uh, tit, titimer, titimer,
Right.
and that occurs only twice in the Torah,
Yeah.
and it occurs twice in this parsha. So it occurs only in this parsha. And titimer is to treat someone as a commodity, sort
Right.
of like enslaving them, but it goes beyond that. Let me read it. The verb occurs only twice in the entire Bible, both times in this week's reading. One must regard once regarding the captive woman.
Mm-hmm.
You must not enslave her, so you must not treat her as a commodity. And once regarding a kidnapper, you should not treat him as a commodity or
Right.
sell him. And unlike there's a rabbi, uh, Michael Karnasek, who argues the root of this word connects to the omer, which is a sheaf of grain or unit of measure, suggesting that the word's real sense is to treat a person as a tradable commodity rather than more of the more generic word, which is to enslave.
Right.
So I think it's interesting. Yeah, they don't
And
want
even by polim, by workers, we see the polim. It mentions that you have to give your workers to eat on the job. And you're saying,
lunch.
you know, all of my employees had the right to eat whenever they wanted. I wouldn't even occur to me to say, hey, you can't eat. I mean, they had the right to eat whenever they wanted. I mean, but the idea is that in those times, workers did not have, just the basic rights that should be accorded that we take for granted today.
Yeah.
In those times, workers, captives, the idea of human rights. uh
Well, it took us a long time to get there. It was only 50 years ago that we had child labor laws.
right, exactly.
I mean,
Exactly. And
we're still working on it.
we still see exploitation today, even in the 21st century. We still see it. So I mean, this parsha actually should draw our attention to the fact that exploitation, existed since that time till today, focusing our attention on recognizing the inherent rights of every human being,
Yeah.
that human beings are not objects, they're not chattel, they're not there for us to exploit, that every human being is created b'tselem Elohim, and we have to recognize that in the image of God. We have to recognize that in every person, every ethnicity, every religion, every background, we have to recognize that that these are, that they have what inalienable rights, right?
Yeah.
And that applies to every human being except one demographic, and I'm not going to go into that.
French Canadians, for those who don't know.
French Canadians, for those who don't know. And if you
Yeah.
don't get the joke, go watch South Park and you'll get it. Okay, now, gay
So,
fighter.
so, yeah, I think it's very interesting that this, several millennium old text is talking about, treating people with kindness and with their own with rights, with inalienable rights, and that's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah.
So, One of the things, since we talk about the Parsha, that we Temple of Miriam, divine magic, mysticism. One of the things I was telling Doctor about is that anyone who wants to know, like, one of the essential elements of divine magic, it really boils down to three components: visualization, affirmation, manifestation. Visualization is, of course, to visualize the objective that you want to achieve. And as I said, divine magic is basically you bring your will into alignment with God's will. God's will is in alignment with your will. Whatever God wants is going to manifest. If your will is in alignment with God's will, it will manifest. If it doesn't, then you have to examine your will. Why is it not in alignment with God's will? Simple as that. But affirmation, the second stage, is that when you want to accomplish something, um, you don't say, I want to achieve this. You have to really mentally say, I have achieved this. In other words, it's already a done deal.
Mm.
And it's already a done deal mentally. I've already achieved my goal. Yes, I've created my business. I've found my significant other. Whatever it is that you want, not that I'm working on it or I'm trying to achieve it, it's already done. It's a done deal. And there's a book called Orchot Tzadikim, Paths of the Righteous,
Oh,
which
that's a good book. That's
right.
a really good book. I
And if
have
you,
that book.
it's an excellent book. I used to teach it, but there's a phrase in there. I think it was in Shar Zerizus, which is the gate of, how do you translate it? Zerizit, alacrity maybe, or zealousness. It says, Mafana called Mafana libo makol machshavat echero sheish bo batofes machshava achad. I have to say it in Hebrew so I can translate it in English because I don't know it in English. Mafana libo mikol machshavot. That you remove from your heart all other thoughts that are in it. Right. Mafana libo mikol hamachshavot. All other
Hmm.
remove from your heart all other thoughts that are in it, and tofes machshava achad, and cling to one thought, and then you'll be successful. In other words, develop laser vision. Anything else, you're working on something, the human brain, the way we are, at least I have to focus on one thing at a time. And if we're focused on multiple things, all right, I'm not saying there are many people, my wife, she can multitask. I can't, but she can do five things at once. Hey, um, some people can smash big bricks with their forehead. I can't, but my wife can multitask. Okay, I've seen her do it. She can be on the phone, writing a letter, working on her computer, and somehow gets it all done. Okay. Um, Most of us, however, if we want to be successful, it says, that you have to remove from your heart all of the thoughts that are in it, and tofet samachshava achat. You cling to one thought. You focus on one thing at a time. And when
Hmm.
you're focusing on that one thing at a time, if you want to achieve something, and like I said, Faith McCann could back me up on this one, the three elements of real magic, divine magic, call it magic, miracle, macaroni, and cheese, call it whatever you want. But the three elements are visualization, affirmation, manifestation. Any system of mystical thought in the world will incorporate those three elements into manifestation, okay, and into what you want to manifest. And now, what's interesting is in this parsha, it starts with these words: Teitzei lamilchama al oivecha. When you take the field, okay, ki teitzei, that when you take lamilchama in a war, right? You take the field in a war. Milchama is a war. Al oivecha, against your enemies. Now, there's one word here, al. Al in Hebrew means on. It means like if you're like on top of something, okay? It doesn't. The word really that I would see as being more suitable, or would be more would be it's to me would fit better is the word neged. Neged means to opposite or to oppose. Okay, like Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, that learning Torah is like balances is equal to all the other commandments. So the idea is that there's a that neged implies opposition. You're opposing something, right? It stands as an obstacle, something that you're opposing. All, on the other hand, implies on top of. And it's actually, if you read it this way, what it's really saying is that when they went into battle, okay, let me just pull up the Torah, the Pasuk again. When they go into battle, they're supposed to go into battle with the mentality they're on top of this. Ki Teitzei, that they're on top of this. In other words, it's not an obstacle to be opposed or to overcome or anything like that. They've already got it. They're on top of it. So therefore, if you look at it from that perspective, what it's really talking about, therefore, is affirmation. When you go into battle, when you're encountering anything in your life, any obstacle, fear, anxiety, or anything else, you have to basically release yourself. You have to orchos sadikim, right? You have to remove from your heart all other thoughts that are in it, and negative thoughts. Thoughts, oh well, what if I don't succeed? I mean, what if they're really well prepared? I mean, what if they have lightsabers? I don't know.
Right.
Whatever. I don't know what I'm going up against here. I mean, I might get my tuchus kicked. I don't want to take. You're thinking, like, do I want to take the risk? Do I want to take the chance? I got to, that fear, that anxiety, that uncertainty can undermine your ability to achieve your objective even before you started. And I always I've been doing this lately, to relate things, every parsha to a thing in the tarot. And you have the devil card here. And I'm saying, you look at the devil card, and what's really interesting is I always point out to people. Now, the devil card, for those not familiar with tarot, but I'm sure many of you are already, but the key words would be domination, submission, temptation, domination, submission. But you look at Adam and Eve, Adam and Chava in this card. I always point out to people the chains are loose. They could slip free. I mean, they could slip free from this big bad blankety blank in back of them and say goodbye, Charlie, and we're out of here, right? So
Yeah.
the point is
I
they
always interpret that card as being materialism that
materialism. It can
yes.
represent negativity, materialism, negativity, addiction, materialism, a toxic relationship with a person, a place, even a situation. That's the way the devil card is usually interpreted. But the point is that they could slip free. They could liberate themselves without a great deal of effort because the chains are loose. And that is the key Teitzei, right? When you go out, the word negative is not used where you're opposing something. Oh, you're on top of it. You've got this. You release yourself. You liberate yourself from fears, insecurity, uncertainty. The idea that you don't entertain the possibility of failure. You'll hear amongst lo mefachet klal, not to be frightened of anything. I'll relate it to a story by the Kriyas Yamsuf, by the parting of the sea,
Mm,
when Moses parted the sea. It says that all of the people, right, and hey, the sea parts, but everybody's hanging back. Everybody's like, hey, yeah, that's really nifty. I mean, wow. I mean,
I'm not going in there.
that's a neat trick. But hey, if we start going through and those walls of water come collapsing in or anything like that, we're kind of screwed, aren't we? So the situation is that what they did, it says that there was a man, Nachshon ben Aminadav, and he walked in until it was up to his waist, up to his chest, up to his chin, over his nose. He had nowhere to go. The thing that says you're gonna, hey, what do you mean? Go, go forward. There's no place to go. I'm gonna drown.
Right.
But for Nachshon ben, he said it doesn't make any difference. Hashem said to get my tuchus moving, I'm gonna move. I'm going to put one foot in front of the other, and I'm going to plunge forward toward my objective. I'm not going to consider what will happen if. There is no if. It's as Yoda said in Star Wars, do or do not. There is no try.
Yeah.
Quoting Yoda. Okay, do or do not. There is no try. That is really the mentality you have when you know you're convinced that your will is in alignment with God's will. That should give you the strength and the power and the resolve and the fortitude to say there is no if, there is no try. I will either do or not do. It was in the zechut of Nachshon ben Aminadav. It was in his merit that the Kriyat Yamsuf took place, because that's the type of that's the type of mindset that each one of us requires to achieve an objective, to liberate ourselves from the materialism and the negativity and the fear, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the toxicity of the devil, the Satan. Remember in Pirkei Avot, the Satan, the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death, and the Yetzer Hara, the evil impulse, are all the same. So the idea is you liberate yourself. The chains are loose. We have the power to liberate ourselves from this negative thinking, and to replace it, to replace the neged opposing, right? Something opposing me with I'm on top of this. I have nothing opposing me. I'm on top of this. And each and every one of us can say, when we encounter an obstacle, a challenge, a blockage in our life, don't look at it as something opposed. Say, I'm on top of this. This is just an illusion. And if
This
my
makes
will is in
me
alignment with God's will, I'm going to be on top of this.
this makes me want to highlight for anybody out there who's struggling and wants to have their cards read. Uh, uh, I just want to mention that Rabbi McLashley is an excellent card reader and tarot card reader, and he does it in the style of Kabbalistic tarot. So, if you are getting something out of these Parshiot, you should definitely consider, if you have a question going on in your life, scheduling a reading with him. I mean, he's
And
giving you pearls, lots of
just to
pearls.
mention, for people who haven't had one done, it's not about gloom and doom. And the way I use it, it's not even about telling you what must happen, because you're in charge of your own fate. You're in charge. You, in connection with the Almighty, with God, determines what's going to happen to you. This basically, I describe it as a spiritual Rorschach test that enables you to look at things together, you, me, together. We're able to look at things from different perspectives and find a meaningful path forward, and to provide guidance, inspiration. But you don't fear that this isn't going to say, oh, gloom and doom, oh, terrible things are wonderful. No, you're in charge of your own fate. You have free will. But this does provide, as Dr. Jeremy says, the whole idea of the way we use it, Dr. Jeremy and I, is to touching the God mind. Touching the God mind, to basically take the divine connection between two people, and the total becomes greater than the sum of its parts, and we can illuminate a positive way forward, investigate possible solutions, investigate possible blockages that are holding someone back. And as I
Yeah.
said, Dr. Jeremy nor I or Madame Zoltana telling you, hey, you're in great danger. It's not like that. So just to alleviate anyone's fears that have seen too many movies or read novels about it, a Kabbalistic tarot card reading is nothing like what you've seen in Christopher Lee movies or whatever.
Yeah. Well, Lolan says here in the comments section that I thought that the Israelites were chased across the Red Sea by the Egyptian chariots, and it's true, they
Yeah,
were, but it doesn't mean that they didn't hesitate when they took their first steps.
yeah. Even with the
Yeah,
chariots behind them, they would say, okay, fine. What do we want to deal with here? Do we want to deal with the chariots, or do we want to drown? I mean, it was kind of like there was still that initial reluctance
Reluctance, yeah.
That initial reluctance that even in the face, even facing a Nace Gully, a revealed miracle, there was still that initial reluctance to commit because, hey, how long is that miracle going to stay in place? And what if Moshe Rabbeinu parts the secret Yam Suf with his staff? What if the batteries run out, right? When we're in the
Right.
middle. In other words, human beings, we can always conjure up fears,
Worst case
worst
scenarios
case
and
scenarios. We can
yeah,
catastrophize.
yeah.
And the message here is that if you find yourself catastrophizing, liberate yourself. You don't have to be chained to that negative way of thinking. It's very easy to slip loose and to replace the neged with all. The opposing, this is opposing me. This is I'm crashing up against it. You replace the neged with all. I'm on top of it. That this is another thing that Dr. Jeremy pointed out about the Eshet Yafet Torah, that I wanted to allude to earlier, is that what comes after is that you say, well, wait a minute, why didn't they just say, hey, look, this is a human being, and a female captive has to be treated with the utmost respect, has to be treated with compassion. Her rights have to be respected. Why didn't the Torah just say, you know what, you can't do it? You can't do it. You can't take a female captive. I don't care how beautiful she is or anything like that. It's just no. Just no. I mean, like the same thing like any of the other laws, like we were talking about kalayim, right? The types of things that grains that you could hybrids. You can't do it. No, forget about it. Move on. Uh, the reason that I learned in yeshiva is that and I'd have to actually refresh myself on the sources, but the reason is that the Torah acknowledges human weakness. The Torah acknowledges human weakness. In a time of war, all right, these guys, they're separated from their wives, or they're separated from they're in a time of war, and they see a really attractive woman, they take her captive, and so the Torah puts these things in place. Hey, look, this is a human being. This isn't the spoils of war here. This is a human being. The reason the Torah just doesn't flat out prohibit it, because it acknowledges human nature. Human nature, people would say, you know what? The Torah says a lot of things, but right now,
This is gonna happen.
this is going to
Yeah,
happen, right?
yeah.
So the Torah acknowledges human weakness. That we're not perfect, okay? We're not perfect, and that if we just flat out say you can't do it, that could just simply be ignored. So what the Torah does is it says, okay, fine, if you're gonna
It
do it,
gives you a pathway to cool your jets.
right, if you're going to do it, I'm going to make it really difficult for you. You
Yeah.
have to give her time to mourn. You have to allow during the Avelit period. She can't trim her nails, she can't brush her hair, she can't do anything, put on cosmetics or anything like that. In other words, I'm going to give you time that. And if after all that period of time you
You
still want to take,
still can't, yeah, you
and
still
comes the Ben Sora Omora, the rebellious son. You don't want a rebellious son because in the Torah, the rebellious son is, well, that's a part that's a thesis or a talk for another day. But they are really bad news. Okay, actually, it was mandated that you had to eliminate the Ben Sora Mora. Wasn't just like a bad boy. This was like a delinquent on steroids. Okay, um, So anyway, the Torah was like the Torah is like saying, you know what? We acknowledge human beings have their weaknesses, have their faults and foibles, and if we just flat out, if the Torah just flat out prohibits it, people may say, well, okay, fine, whatever. It's the same
some
thing.
of the
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
it's the same thing, really, in a sense. And I've argued this point. The former chief rabbi of Ireland wrote a book. Wrote not a book, but he wrote a article or a thesis that uh, concerning eating meat. Now, eating meat is completely acceptable in Judaism. I know many people in the other, ironically, Irish Jews, Rabbi McNabb's family. He recently got married just a couple few months ago, and we went to a karaoke night with him, Doctor, him and his wife,
Oh, wonderful.
and we went to a karaoke night, and his uncle is also solid Scots Irish, but he's Jewish, of course. He came up like I did, Jewish. But the thing is that you will find in our tribe vegetarians, and they're like I said, you can Google it online. It's called Jew Irish, one word, Jewirish, Jew Irish, Heeb, and vegan. And it talks about this. But the thing is that in terms of eating meat, I say, look, absolutely. I mean, the korbanot, the sacrifices, the kahanim had to eat meat. And it says it many times in the Talmud, Ein simcha ela basa v'yayin. There's no joy without meat and wine. And what is it? So the idea is Ein simcha ela basa v'yayin. It says, what is it? I think basa v'yayin royal melech. It's fit for a king. On Shabbat, you eat meat. And I'm saying, yeah, people who eat meat, that's fine. That's wonderful. That's 100% acceptable. I'm not in any way judging people who eat meat. I mean, you eat meat for the proper reason, to nourish yourself, to use that energy to do good deeds and to serve God. Go ahead and knock yourself out. My wife is not a vegetarian. She won't eat anything that came from the ground. Okay, I can tell you that. She's like what they call an obligate carnivore.
Oh, yeah.
She's an obligate carnivore. Okay, so but I came up vegetarian, and one of the arguments that Rabbi Rosen made, who was the former chief rabbi in Ireland, is that it's very, very interesting. The same concept that we see with the Eshet Yafet Toar, okay, making it difficult, making it hard, putting up blockages and obstacles. We
Yeah.
see that very same thing with meat. How
Well,
is
you see that very same thing with a lot of things.
with a
Like
lot of things that the
for
Torah doesn't
instance,
flat out
you're
deny, but it
supposed to
makes it
put
so difficult.
you're supposed to put a railing around your roof, right?
Right.
So that somebody doesn't fall off. It's the
That's in
same
this week's
thing.
Parsha.
Make it difficult. It's in the
Right.
same parsha. Make it difficult for you to fall off.
That's in
You
this week's
know?
Parsha, yeah.
Yeah.
The idea is with meat, I mean, you have to, okay, think of all you have to do. Okay, why? Fine. I want a peach. All right, pluck it off the tree and I eat it. No
That's
problem,
easy. Right.
right? But with meat, the animal has to be shechted, has to be slaughtered in a way to
In a
minimize.
certain way, right.
Right,
It has to be
it has
prepared
the
in a certain
challah,
way. It can
right,
be
the
only
challah, the
certain
blade.
animals. Yeah, that's the fence. That's the
And then you have to
fence.
soak it and salt it, and then the challah, the blade you use to do the slaughtering, has to be pagam moment. If it has one nick or scratch, it renders the meat unacceptable.
Yeah.
It has to be done in one swift, clean strike. It has to, to minimize the animal's suffering. It's a very humane way of doing it. But so the idea is that even the animal isn't there just for you to be mamale taiva, for you to gratify
Right.
your animal lust or your desire for meat. Um, and of course, meat.
We have to minimize suffering of
Right.
all types.
And
Minimize.
up until the door, up until after the door Hamabel, we weren't permitted meat. Meat was off limits. It was only after the door Hamabel, the generation of the flood, after the time of Noach, that it became eating meat. So I say, that yeah, there's no problem with eating meat. Now it's completely permissible. It was even mandated. Like I said, the kabbalah, the shlomim, the chatat, all the different kabbalah, you had to bring meat to sacrifice this and that. So I'm not in any way judging people who eat meat. I'm simply saying that the Torah seems to be saying if you're going to eat the meat, consider carefully you're taking the life of one of God's creatures. And consider that very carefully how you're going to use that nourishment or that energy that you're getting from that source. Consider it very carefully before you do it. And
Yeah.
it's the same mentality. Look, yes, technically the Torah is going to permit it. If a female is taken captive in a time of war, you have, technically fine. You can marry
Well, this
her.
is Dan Stein brings up an interesting question in the chat,
Yeah.
which relates to this. He asks, does the Torah say anything about having multiple wives? Does it put a limit on it? And
Not in
my
the Torah Shabbat. Rabbeinu Gershon, Rabbeinu Gershon, it was a Takana de Rabbeinu Gershon that basically, and that actually Takana, that rabbinical thing expired, but then it got reinstated. But up until the Takana de Rabbeinu Gershon, up until Rabbeinu Gershon, you could have multiple wives.
You could have multiple wives, and it does say that, but again, putting a fence around it, right, making it difficult to have multiple wives, are 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 the rules around having multiple wives. For instance, they have to all be treated the same and
Yeah,
fairly, right? You can't have one favorite wife
right.
and the other ones are relegated to secondary positions and things
Exactly.
like that. You have to supply them all equally with, uh whatever, clothing, food, dresses, whatever, it makes it, it puts up the fence around the roof, uh is there the so there you go. You can have as many as you want, but that's going to make your life very, very, very difficult.
Another thing too is that in modern times, from today, the takana, the rabbinical editing emendation of Rabbeinu Gershon has been reinstated. So today, monogamy is the only thing in
Yeah.
the Jewish community. We do not have polygamy today. Actually, there's a rather severe punishment today for having multiple wives.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get multiple mother-in-laws.
Yeah, that's true. That would be true, right? Yeah, yeah. And what about, someone asks, well, what about levirate marriage? Is that still practiced today?
Yibum, yes, amongst the Orthodox, the ultra-Orthodox, Yibum, the Levirate marriage is still practiced, and Chalitza, where if the person doesn't want to do it, they actually spit in the shoe. Yeah, it's still practiced amongst
Wait, what? Spit in the shoe? Wait a minute. Tell
Chalitza,
me about
Chalitza.
this.
Yeah, if they don't, in other words, if the brother doesn't want to do it, then he has to spit in her shoe, and there's a whole process of like
So
yeah.
he's not obligated to do it. The brother's not obligated.
Well, he's obligated, but if he doesn't fulfill his obligation, there's what they call chalitza. But actually, yeah, that in the vast majority outside of the Orthodox Jewish community, you don't encounter yibum, the obligation of a,
Mhm.
the obligation. But it is obligatory for the brother
Yeah.
to, if his brother's wife, his brother passes away.
And that was for the brother who passed away. That was for the benefit of the brother who passed away,
Right,
so
right.
that his name would continue.
Continue exactly, and that's what's called yibum. That is called yibum. Yibum is the Levirate marriage, and chalitza was like I said, the. But like I said, that only apply that doesn't apply to the vast majority. But there's laws of Yevamot in Gemara, the laws is Masechet Yevamot. We'll talk about all those laws. They're very complicated and in depth. Uh, Yevamot. I have to read. That's good because I really should go back and do a little bit of Chazorah, refresh my memory on Yevamot. Not being, but yeah, it's still applicable to today. But if you ask the vast majority of Jews, even rabbis outside of Orthodox will say, "Oh, that hasn't been practiced in thousands of years." No, not true. It's still Nogea B'davar today amongst the Orthodox. Yeah.
Someone, Mark Gilmore says, so it's not an obligation to protect and support her. Yes, it's an obligation to protect and support this woman. Yeah.
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 Yeah, it's
So,
it's it's obligatory, and like I said, I mean things that are obligatory in the Torah. I mean, like I said, the Torah allows, but chalitza, it's a rather you know it's a rather difficult concept to explain to people. But okay, here it is. It's a ritual in Jewish law where a childless widow, all right, a childless widow and her deceased husband's brother. So, in other words, her deceased husband's brother. Her husband has a brother, and he dies childless. Okay, formally declined to enter into a levirate marriage. Okay, and her deceased brother formally declined to enter into a levirate marriage. Yibum. Okay, it releases both parties from the biblical obligation. Basically,
oh, okay.
it is a loophole. It's a
Good.
loophole to release them from from the chovah midiraita, the obligation by Torah law. Okay, it takes place before Bet Din. The widow declares the almana declares that her brother-in-law refuses to carry on his brother's name, and then the widow removes a specific ceremonial shoe from the brother-in-law's foot. She removes a shoe from her brother-in-law's foot and spits on the floor in front of him and recites there's a pasuk, a biblical declaration, and then the bet then provides her with a get chalitza, a formal
Mm,
divorce. So that's what chalitza
the
is.
get out of jail free card.
Basically, people don't like it when I say it, but I'm saying it's a loophole.
Yeah.
It is a loophole. I mean, it is a loophole. I mean, technically, the he has an obligation, of course, that his brother's widow wants to marry. If she doesn't want to marry him, okay, fine, no problem. But if she says, "Hey, look, you have this obligation," and he opts out, and he says, "No, no, no, no dice." Now, what's really interesting is since it's kind of Rabbeinu Gershon, if the brother-in-law was already married, well, back at a time that we could have multiple wives, that polygamy was acceptable. But Bisman Hazeh, in modern times, chances are maybe the brother-in-law is already married, in which case you can't have more than one wife. My question would be, in such a case. In such a case, would Yibum still be, and I don't know the answer, I have to check this out, but would Yibum still be required? Would Yibum, in other words, still be effect? Because you have two things here now conflicting with each other. Yibum stating that if his brother died leaving his widow childless, you have an obligation to marry her. But wait a minute, if he's already married, and now today we cannot have multiple wives to kind of the Rabbeinu Gershon.
Right.
I'd have to check out
Well,
what would be the answer on that.
Lolan brings up another very good point, which I don't know the answer to. What if the widow is 70 years old and beyond childbearing years?
That's another good question. I don't know, but Tzchak Sarah, Sarah had what? She was 90, so I mean, I don't know. Back then, today, if she was, she was 70 years old. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
It's a very interesting question. I don't know the answer to. I don't know the answer to. But we're coming up on the end. It's 8:55. I think this is a I think this is a perfect place for us to stop with some questions that we should go and look up the answers to. I expect everybody to go and look up the answers and bring them back to us next week. Okay?
I'll look up
You're
some.
not here just to learn, but you're here to contribute too. Okay? So, yes, you might very well have financial needs. That's true. That's true,
That's
100%.
it. She has financial needs, and that's the question. I don't know. If she's 70 years old, but she's Christina Brinkley, hey, maybe I'd say, yeah.
Well, I want to thank everybody for coming. It's a great parsha. We have Ma'ariv tomorrow night on Wednesday. Right, it's Tuesday already. I can't believe it. This week is going fast. So we'll see you tomorrow night. Parsha, Ma'ariv is at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. Um, and I just want to bless everybody who comes. You guys are phenomenal, and you ask interesting questions, and you really keep us thinking, keep us on our toes. So I want to thank each and every one of you. All right. So Lila Tov.
Thank you so much. God bless you guys. Have a good night. We look forward to seeing you again.
Lila Tov. And I'll put this up on YouTube. Shof Team, by the way, did not get on YouTube for some reason. I can't get it on YouTube for some reason.
Oh, and Parsha the Paranormal, Doctor. Let's let people know it's coming back.
It's coming back. Parsha the Paranormal, the 30th. We're gonna do it Sunday the 30th. It's gonna be a great one. So don't miss that. Don't miss that.
And we're going to make it, this time I'm going to make it interactive. Dr. Jeremy will give you the information, but some readily accessible things everyone has laying around their house. Bring it to this because we're going to make it interactive and participatory.
Oh, that's great.
Really do some hands-on activities that we're going to all do together. And it's going to be a blast. I think we're all going to have a great time. So,
All
again,
right.
God bless and have a good night.
Lila Tov.
Success, everybody. Bye bye.